Right, I'm lost for words right now. For years, this country's been ruled by an absolutely vile, horrid person. Things have just gone from worse to worse to worse, to a point where how on earth can this country have got so bad? Now, forever since I remember, every Prime Minister in this country has been an absolutely horrid person. For some reason, it's worse people always get into the top position and get to be Prime Minister. It's always people from Eton and privileged backgrounds who feel like they're more superior to everyone else and have that advantage and pretty much always lie to the public to get in charge. But Boris takes it to a level even lower than what's expected of for a UK Prime Minister. The lies and stuff he does is just beyond belief. And for some reason, people seem to accept it because he does these weird bumbling speeches where he acts like some sort of weird clown, and people seem to not hold him to the same standards they would do to a regular politician, even though all of his speeches are clearly well scripted and rehearsed. These are not fuck-ups. Everyone seems to think he's an ordinary person who just messes up. He isn't. These are absolutely deliberately done speeches to make people think he's a sort of funny person who isn't very good at speeches and people then like him, and it's completely untrue. Yet so many people are so dumb they just fall for this stuff. Then Boris says other stuff which appears to be fuck-ups, even though they're clearly not fuck-ups, like a bit where he called Muslim women letterboxes. That was not some mistake, it wasn't some error. He deliberately did that as a calculated move to both appeal to people where he was trying to say there should be more rights for Muslims and stuff. He wanted to appeal to that group. At the same time, he wanted to appeal to the really racist group of people who made a speech about why people should have rights, and at the same time made that extra little unnecessary comment to appeal to all of the far right people, and by saying a stupid racist bollocks like that to try and get the people on the far right to also support him. It was a calculated move. He made the news and everyone criticised him for calling Muslims letterboxes. But at the same time, even though it made the news and he was criticised, he still got publicity to it, which was the whole aim of the thing. And he knew he'd get criticism, but he deliberately did that speech in a way so he'd get a bit of criticism, but not so much it would ruin him, but just enough so he'd make the news and would appeal to both sides. Because in the news, on the BBC and everywhere else, he said that while Boris was making a speech to show rights for women and Muslims, he made a fluff up and called Muslim women letterboxes. And that headline even buys into exactly what Boris is trying to do by that speech. That headline buys in to people thinking on one side that he is wanting women's rights and stuff, and on the other side people thinking, oh, he's one of them, he's a racist just like me, because let's face it, half his country are bloody racists. And for some reason it just works, despite the awful tactics, a level of lower you did not expect to get even for the crappy politics of this country. Yet he's not held to account for this sort of utter horrible, nasty, unmanipulative, undermining method that he used to get in power. Then, when he got in power, it's all based around Brexit and all the lies of that. And I could talk about that for hours and hours and hours, but I've already spoke about that before, so I won't talk about that in this video. Then there was the proroguing of Parliament. I've never known this to happen in the history of politics in this country. Is this the sort of thing you'd hear about in some other countries where there's a lot more corruption, like somewhere in the Middle East or somewhere in the middle of Africa or something, where there's loads of corruption and you get that kind of stuff to stop debate? The fact that happened in a Western country where it's supposed to be democracy, and the Prime Minister can stop Parliament for the sole purpose to try and stop a debate happening because he didn't want to hear the debate. That is a coup. And that was not held to account properly. It did make the papers at the time, and people talked about it for maybe a week or 2 weeks, and then people just forgot about it. Just like all of other Boris's stuff he does. People just forget about it. The media report it, but they don't report it too much. They just report it enough to sell papers, but they don't fully go into the detail of exactly how bad and how major the stuff he does. And the reason for that is they want to criticise him because that's their job, but they don't want to criticise him too much because they don't want to stop him getting into power. Because the media, all based around their power, is based around his power. Because all the time Boris is in power, the media's not that regulated that much, and let's face it, people like Rupert Murdoch also don't want all their money taken away in taxes. So Rupert Murdoch's got a vested interest in making sure Boris is in power, which is why he's not held to account as much as what he should be in Rupert Murdoch's papers. When on the other hand, Jeremy Corbyn, the press went full on looking through every little detail he did to try and get as much dirt on him as possible, such as real bullshit stuff like he didn't bow properly when he laid a wreath at the cenotaph, which is a load of nonsense. Yet the media go on and on about a few things that Corbyn did, and he did do a few fuck-ups like the anti-Semitism stuff, which was bad, but not as bad as the media portrayed it to be. Then there was a bit about how he liked a mural which was anti-Semitic, and let's face it, that was a fuck-up. It wasn't like a big thing. He wasn't like doing it out of some major anti-Semitic hate. It was just literally a fuck up. Yet the media keep talking about his fluff. So his fluffs got repeated again and again and again in the media, which as far as I can tell is only 3 fluffs that he did. Yet Boris's continue, and not even fluffs, his deliberate, awful stuff he does to manipulate himself into power, which I can think of 20, 30 things he's done, they don't get repeated. They just get reported on the once, but not repeated again and again to make it look like Boris is an alright person and Jeremy Corbyn is not an alright person, which is what the media have been portrayed, because the media don't want Jeremy Corbyn in power, because he'd crack down on them and they then tax more and take away the moguls that own the papers. He'd take away a lot of their money and they don't want that. So this whole country's politics is based around what the media feed the people, and what the media feed the people is just vested interest in the few people are richer own the media, and that's what this country's been like for ages. But things have got to a whole level which I'd never believe I'd get to, especially in recent months. There's been the coronavirus, and then there's been restrictions of massive human rights breach, and even if some restrictions were needed because of the virus, after coronavirus, let's face it, the government's not going to fully give back the restrictions. They're going to be based on the fact that people are used to having restrictions, so then after coronavirus is over, they give back some restrictions, but we won't be as free as we were before coronavirus happened. It's clearly obvious that's going to happen. And then, with all the restrictions going on, the actual people running the country didn't obey their own restrictions. It's beyond words. I don't even know what to say about this. You had Boris's henchman, Dominic Cummings, driving across the country, which was a clear breach of the restrictions, yet they didn't even apologise for it. He was then found to have not breached any rules. Even though if the ordinary public did what he did, they'd get fined. But despite that, he didn't, and the government actively said that Dominic Cummings did not breach the rules, even though he clearly did. A fact that the government just lied to people's faces right when they're accused of doing the very thing they did. Then more and more things come out, and I bet there's going to be a lot more things. And some of these things are so messed up. One of the big ones is Rees-Mogg, one of the nastiest, vilest people in the government, a massive capitalist pig. So what will we get if Rees-Mogg ever got in power? Chlorinated chicken, pretty much no regulation on anything, so any old thing could be in your food. Workers' rights would be removed, there would be no caps on people's salaries, so people would be paid nothing to work. That's what Rees-Mogg wants. And people, especially people, would actually be affected by all of that. The most poorest people in the country would be affected most negatively with the relaxation of rights which Rees-Mogg would do, except they're the people that actually vote for him because people are so bloody thick. And while all that's happening, Rees-Mogg thinks restrictions don't apply to him and even jokes about how his social distance party is not social distance, and even jokes about how it's a big breach of the rules. Like, fucking hell.
I see we're all here obeying regulations, aren't we? I mean, this party is not going to be investigated by the police in a year's time. You are all very carefully socially distanced. We've moved, I'm pleased to tell you, from the metric back to the imperial system. I know you're at least 2 inches of regulation, which is, as I understand it, what the regulations require during the social distancing period.
Then as well as that, we've got this other thing that's came out where they're doing practice rehearsal runs for this person to be interviewed by the media, and in the rehearsal runs they make loads of jokes about how there's a big party in Downing Street that breached all of the rules, but hey, who cares, because they're politicians and they're never held to account.
I've just seen reports on Twitter that there was a Downing Street Christmas party on Friday night. Do you recognise those reports?
I went home. Hold on.
Would the Prime Minister condone having a Christmas?
What's the answer?
I don't know. I didn't.
Wasn't a party, it was cheese and wine.
Just be clear, it's not.
Is cheese and wine all right? It was a business meeting.
I'm joking.
This is recorded. This fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced. One more. Ask anybody have any questions?